Chapter 17 begins on page 457 in your book. We're going to be discussing business math for pharmacy technicians. So most of this math you would see more in a retail pharmacy than you would in an institutional pharmacy. Especially in some smaller pharmacies, like independent pharmacies, you may have to, take on some of these calculations for the business in addition to your normal technician duties. But just overall, it's really important to understand these concepts to know how pharmacies make money and just, the ins and outs of the business side of the pharmacy as well. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to define all of these terms. So first we have net income, which is the same thing as net profit. So that's basically all of the money that the pharmacy is going to have or, make at the end of the year or the end of the period, whatever we're discussing. And that's going to include all of the expenses being taken out as well. A discount, most of us know what that means already. A discount is just going to be receiving a percentage off of the retail price. And then oppositely, a markup, that's going to be, the markup amount is basically the difference between the cost of an item and the retail price. So when pharmacies buy drugs, they're going to buy them at a certain cost, and then they're going to mark them up to a retail price to make a profit. So the difference between the retail price and the cost will be the markup. We're also going to be discussing gross margin in a little bit, which is also known as the markup percentage. I'm having a lot of you guys calculate that for your project this quarter as well. So you've probably already done that. Some of you may not even have realized what you have done, but that's considered markup and markup percentage. Inventory, just the general merchandise that a business has. In the pharmacy's case, that's mainly going to be the drugs and, drug devices, medical devices that the pharmacy will sell. Cash flow, that's just taking a look at the overall expenses going in and out of a business. Turnover rate, that's going to be how often the entire inventory turns over, meaning how often it is bought and sold throughout the year. And then gross income or gross profit, that's going to be the income that the pharmacy has throughout the year without taking out any of the expenses. So we're going to get into detail on all of these terms here. The first thing I'm going to start out with is depreciation here. So depreciation is a rate that represents the decrease in value of an asset over time. So anytime you buy really anything, it is not going to always carry the same value as what you purchased it for. So the example that I always use is, when you buy a brand new car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, it starts to depreciate or lose value. So when we're calculating annual depreciation for any asset, like a computer or a printer, we're just going to take the cost of that item and divide that by the estimated time of use in years. So how long do we think that that item should last? So let's just take a look at an example here. Let's say that we just bought a brand new computer for the pharmacy for $2,500. So that was the cost. And the estimated time of that computer would be, let's say, 7 years. So we expect that computer to last us at least 7 years and, still be working well. So when we're calculating depreciation, all we do is just take the cost, so 2,500, and we divide that by the 7 years. So this is going to give us the annual depreciation. So how much that asset is going to lose in value each year. So 2,500 divided by 7 gives us $357.14. So that is our annual depreciation. So after the first year that we have this computer, it's going to lose $357.14 of value. So by the end of that 7 years, the value essentially is going to be 0. So very simple calculation there. Just take the cost divided by the estimated time of use in years. So now we're going to go back to the slides here. We're taking a look now at what we call overhead. So the overhead is basically just the cost of doing business. So you can see some examples here. You know, we got to pay wages for our technicians and pharmacists. So salaries, licenses, you know, just keeping up to date with the general state licenses, things like that. Equipment purchases, new computers, new printers, anytime something needs repaired in the pharmacy. Depreciation, what we just considered, you know, the value that our assets are losing over time. Utilities, it costs to, you know, have the lights running, water, telephone, insurance, taxes, and then rent. So just some examples of the costs of doing business. Now, very important to note, the overhead never includes inventory. So please make sure you remember that. It's going to be very important when we get into some of these calculations here. So overhead is the cost of doing business, does not include inventory. Okay, let's take a look at this example here. So we have various costs that a pharmacy is spending throughout the month here. So we have inventory for a week, salaries for a week, the rent per month, utilities per month, insurance per month, depreciation, and taxes per month. Question says, what is the overhead for 1 week? Now, let's take a look here. So I've just transferred all of these costs down here, so we can still see all of these. So the question was, what is the overhead for 1 week? So remember, overhead includes the cost of all costs of doing business except for the inventory. So what we don't need to worry about is the inventory. And they wanted the overhead for 1 week. Now we can see that salaries are given to us per week, but all of these things here are given to us per month. So when we're doing these calculations in these chapters, we're going to assume that there are 4 weeks in a month, unless they state otherwise here. So what we need to do with each of these to find the weekly amount would be to just divide each of these by 4 to give us the weekly amount. So we'll start here, $1,525 for rent, divide that by 4. That gives me, I'll write these down here, 381.25. So we got the rent. The salaries were, this was already per week here, so we're going to include that as well. So 19,600, that was per week. We got the salaries. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So utilities, 1,225 divided by 4 gives me 306.25. Insurance, 1,480 divided by 4 gives me 370. And then depreciation, 2,860 divided by 4 gives me 715. And then lastly, taxes, 1,165 divided by 4 gives me $291.25. So I'm calculating the overhead for 1 week. These are all of our expenses here per week. So we can just add all of those together here. So $381.25 plus 19,600 plus 306.25 plus 370 plus 715 plus 291.25 gives me a total of $21,663.75. So that was the overhead per week. Now it says, what is the overhead for 1 month and then per year? Okay, so we already have the weekly overhead. So instead of taking the time to add all these up per month again, what we can do with this number, this was our weekly rate. I just said that there are 4 weeks in a month. So to find per month, all we have to do is take this number here and to take that times 4, because this is per week. There are 4 weeks in a month. So this number times 4 gives me $86,655 even. And then lastly, the overhead per 1 year. Well, we know that there are 12 months in a year, and each month is 86,655. So I can just take that number times 12, which gives me my overhead for the year. So $1,039,860. So that is the cost of doing business for the year, does not include the inventory. So that is our overhead.